Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. Thought I would go over something that's been requested previously in the comments. It's going to be the different types of 3M Cantata cartridges, my thoughts, what limited information is out there, and what I'm seeing between the different types of cartridges that are in my collection. To me, it's a lot of the information here is, I would say, lost to time since 3M seems to have destroyed all the records regarding the 3M Cantata. And, what we have left is some very old Billboard articles and the actual paraphernalia that comes with machines. We're talking stickers, labels, things of that nature, when the last time it was serviced. And that would be the only, I would say, it's almost like dealing with art. You got to deal with the provenance of each individual cartridge or machine to figure out A, how old it is, and B, what was the approximate length of time it was manufactured. So I'm going to start with the beginning. This machine, the 3M Cantata, was released in sometime in 1965, and it seems to be there were several different cartridges, and all of them end with the the suffix 165. So, for example, this is if you can see that there, it's a melodic library 165. And you can see it's just a standard 3M Cantata cartridge, nothing special about it. It looks similar. Now, this I would consider the first generation of cartridge. Now, the thing is that they did release a couple of these later on in its life that have the same melodic library 165, but they were to a later cartridge design. It's almost like a re-release of an album. So same contents are on it. It's just a different cartridge, and it's a little bit younger. In this case, this particular one is an early one because it comes in this handsome man style box versus one that came out in the later 70s with this very 70s disco couple on it. And you'll see this probably up until the 85, 86 where they stopped making these cartridges. Now we get into the oddballs after 86, where 3M sold off the tooling, it seems, to Muzak, and they come in a plain box, but they're actually labeled quite differently. They have Muzak stickering all over it. It contains Muzak cartridges, but the sad thing is that they literally use the original tooling to the point where there's two stickers on here. The actual 3M labeling is, if we pull it off, you get to see the M. Yeah, so this is a late model 3M cartridge, just labeled as Muzak. I don't know how many shells they had lying around, but at least this was a 3M cartridge rebranded as Muzak, and all the Muzak ones that I have are labeled as 3M with a sticker on it. So, in the original, it's almost like archaeology dealing with these things. You have, when these cartridges first came out, they came in a box, handsome box like this, and they were in a plastic bag, and then they had a set of instructions in it. Fortunately, I do have a original copy of the 65 instructions, and it basically says, this. So, how to put it into the machine, whatnot, follow the instruction brochure. And this is the only copy of it that I have. If you look at the later machines, especially the ones from the 70s, they actually show you a large list of products that were actually available from their sound products division. We've got microphones, intercom systems, amplifiers, things of that nature. And I believe in this one, here's the one that you're looking for. This is a 3M Cantata Mark II right here. This is the second generation machine that didn't last as long. These were lease only from 3M. We've also, in my collection of things on the actual machine, my actual 3M Cantata is not one that was manufactured in 65. I figure it was manufactured in 66 or 67 based on the patent information on the back of it. It says patent pending for some things. Later ones actually have the patent numbers on it. But I actually have the service tag that was in there, and it says Martin Business Machines, and it looks like this one came from San Bernardino, California. Predates area codes. You can see it actually has the TU prefix instead of like 562 or 714, one of those area codes. And you can see that it was at least this sticker. There's nothing. Is there something underneath? No, there's nothing underneath. But you could see that it was serviced by somebody named Ron on October 1st, 1968. And that's probably when it was first installed. You could see there was a service call, and then it just kept going. And it looks like it actually had a motor replace in December 1968. And you could see it was last serviced in 1975 by somebody, I believe, Wally? I don't know who that is, but Bobby, who knows? Some guy in 1975 was the last person to service this, and it probably sat in the storage room until, it came. This thing actually came from Monterey Park in near Los Angeles, and it's nowhere near this address in San Bernardino. So obviously it was probably in the San Bernardino area, and then eventually came to Monterey Park somehow, probably thrift shop or former employee, or who knows, it just got resold as junk. Who knows? Now, the weird cartridges that you're going to find are actually the Christmas ones, because I know I've seen, let's see, for example, this is Continuous Christmas Library 167. They were released in 1967. They look like a standard cartridge. There's nothing going on. They have the same caution sticker that's supposed to be in the corner of all these early ones. And they also come in the standard pretty box. It's almost like a PC box. It's a full-size box, and it just has warranty information. Some of these I've seen the dates on them appear to be 70s, and the cartridge components appear to be 70s, but they still show the 167 date range. Now, it is possible that some of these cartridges got so worn out because they were playing for so long that they were actually rebodied cartridges from somewhere else. Let's say they had a cartridge that they absolutely hated. It's like, for example, the Nashville one is something that I don't really care for, but some people may like, some people don't. I just don't care for it. This Nashville cartridge, this is actually a Nashville cartridge, and I know they came where they said American Country and it didn't have this blue style box, but in reality, this blue box is a 165 box that somebody hand labeled to say Nashville, and inside you'll find a molested 165 cartridge with the correct labeling, but somebody actually put the Nashville sticker on it. Now, what confuses me is that this has an 88 prefix on it, or excuse me, suffix on it, and I know that these were released approximately 1968, 1969 from, the information that I can glean in Billboard and some of the other publishing, record publishing journals, or whatever you want to call them. So that 88 is erroneous. Some of them are very consistent. They show 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, and then you get an 88, and we know that 3M divested their entire sound products division by 1986, so it doesn't make any sense unless somebody else was making them and licensing them. Like, maybe that was a Muzak cartridge and they were just repurposing old stuff on the shelf. I don't know. Now, we also get some oddballs like this Elegance cartridge, and you notice how everything on it is flipped. If you compare it to a 65 and you flip it over the correct way, everything's inverted on it. You see the 3M is inverted, you see the stickers inverted, and you could see that the labeling's different. It went for an all gold instead of a two-tone blue and gold font. And the numbering scheme is EL236, which doesn't correspond with any of the, I would say, quote, dates that the other ones seem to have. You also look at the tape style. I'm not sure if the camera's going to pick this up, but this one, the later one, is a very slightly darker gray than this one. This stuff is, I would say, it's almost like a it's very high quality. Whatever was being put in the the 65 tapes seemed to contain lead and all the other fun materials that make things nice. Versus this one, it's a very rattly cartridge. Versus this guy, which is the same amount of rattly, but this one's got sharp edges. The tooling seems to be different. It's very cheap feeling. And they actually, instead of having just the thickness of the shells hold the thing together, they actually put a metal plate in it. You can see that there's this metal guy right here, and there's an actual retaining plate that goes across like this on the cartridge. That was done in the 70s, but by the 80s, it's more predominant. It seems that all of them have that thing. And this beige color is very indicative of the 80s. I also have a date on this thing, this box, which shows that it was manufactured in the 80s. It says 80 on the actual box label. But the fun thing is, if you look at what gives me a hint to their actual dates, is you look at the back of the box and it shows what products were available from their sound products division. And you got to compare the older 70s stuff, and you look at it, a lot of it's a holdover from the 60s. You got this push button microphone from the 50s. You got this 3M Cantata Mark II. You got a punch card, time clock machine. Looks like a answering service machine. Just a whole bunch of, it looks real 60s. And then you go to that, and the speakers may look like 60s, but the microphones definitely later 70s. And this box style you see a lot in their early to mid 80s sound products division company. They go really industrial. They lose the wood grain. It's black, white, and beige. That would be the color scheme for those devices. Now, I don't know what drove them to do this. I suspect that it's, as old as everything else, it's always going to be cost. They basically were probably trying to save a penny, make the tapes not last as long so they could sell more of them. Because I know most of you who are here, you already know at least some of the Cantata. I could see a lot of the traffic. A lot of them come from Techmoan, and he's explained quite a bit of this machine when it was when it was developed, approximately how long it existed, and kind of its basic principle of operation. So you already kind of know what's going on. Yeah, you could see a lot of these tapes were retired. This one says "lousy music" on it, and you could even see in the actual tape box, somebody lined it out specifically so they could sell it on eBay. Great, thanks guys. One thing I haven't done is basically describe the difference between the different generations of tapes in a good way. So in 65, I would say 65 to 68, we had a very basic cartridge. It's a hard shell plastic. It's almost like Bakelite, but it doesn't have that texture. But it's very solid plastic. It contains metal reels, and you have this style sticker when inserting cartridge. Be sure you're not screwing up. And you notice that here in this corner is that there's a blank. It's all the strength of the cartridge is contained within the shell itself. You can see that you have a white 3, a brand in white, and the M in blue. And this would be a first generation 65 cartridge. Now, the second generation cartridge, of course, I forgot to mention metal reels. First generation has metal reels. Now, the second generation is just a slight revision and tweaking of the first generation. Looks the same. Nothing's different. You got metal reel. You notice that they went from a two-tone scheme to just blue. The labeling is still the gold and blue two-tone, but you notice that they put a reinforcing plate here. The actual cartridge is heavier, but the plastic is a lot thinner. You notice that they put this metal reinforcing plate which affixes here and here in the plastic, so the actual molds are different. There's nothing different. The bottom of it still has the same 3M cartridge. Nothing else has changed. It's almost like, oh, we're going to improve the design of the existing cartridge. This was it. Now, if you compare the two side by side, you can see there is a significant color change. I don't know if it's age, I don't know if it's the plastic they use, but there is a difference. You can also see there's a little reinforcing locating tab right here versus none in the original one. To me, when handling these, I do like the first generation because they just seem to go together a lot easier than the later ones. The reinforcing tray, the metal reinforcing tray, it just doesn't, the reels drag on the metal tray, and sometimes when you see the actual cartridges playing, especially some of the previous videos on the channel, I actually removed the metal tray because the discs on them warp so bad. The aluminum tends to droop and sag over time, and the plastic reels warp, and it really drags on that metal plate. And I'll show you in a slightly different one here. So this is a 70s, I would say this is an early 70s one, and you could see, this is a mid 70s one. You could see the colors changed. The reels are no longer aluminum. They're this nasty, nasty plastic. As soon as these things get hot, they warp, and you could see this powdered substance that's happening on the top. That's actually plastic from it dragging on the insides of this cartridge. And no matter what you do, let's say you heat them up slightly and you get them nice and straight, and you kind of put spacers, in between the shell just to get them off. Just by them being in the machine, they warp. The heat off the machine actually warps the plastic. And I mean, it could be age, these things are 40 years old now, but I don't think so. I think it's just a very cheap, very cost-reduced design. Basically, this worked when it was metal, and it doesn't work when it's plastic. And you could see that it's got the locating tab, it's got the reinforcement here, it's got the reinforcement here, and the label has changed slightly on the back. The logo's a little different, but it's, overall it's the same as the Revision 2. It's just made out of really crap materials. Now, the very last ones, it's kind of almost a return to form on the original 68 generation cartridge. As you could see, they're a brown color. They're a little, I would say it's almost like they use better plastic and worn tooling, like the actual texturing compared to this guy. Oh, you might not be able to see it in camera because it's so light. The texturing on this brown one is just, it's just different. It feels rough and feels unfinished. It almost feels like it's just worn out. The edges are sharp. It's just a, crap plastic. And you can see that, nothing else has changed. It's still the crap plastic reels. You still got the locating tab, and they blanked off the actual where it would have said 3M on the back. If you actually peel this label off, it does contain the existing 3M cartridge number, and then it actually has it in here, which suggests to me that they just reused existing shells that they had in stock, or stuff that was manufactured for 3M that they just, all right, let's stick some Muzak labels on this and go. And unfortunately, it really shows Muzak. But let's see if we can get all of these guys in here now. Hopefully you can see all the different color changes over the time period. So to me, there's 4 distinct generations of 3M Cantata cartridge. You have, bottom 65. You have a running revision in either 67 or 68. I think it's 68. Don't hold me on that. Then this is definitely mid 70s, and then at the very top is the very end of the line, you have 86 and above. Now, a lot of this information that I've come up with is either from the mention in the Billboard articles about the 3M releasing the new country cartridge, things of that nature, but very little is documented, and I have to go off, handwritten labels. Like somebody actually purchased this box, and they hand wrote labels on the boxes. And I'm trying to bear with me here. I'm trying to find one with labeling on it, and it might be inside the house right now. But anyway, you're looking at the cartridge and the paraphernalia that comes with it and using that to date the cartridge. There's no real way to tell because no information exists. So you have to look at it. You have to look at paraphernalia like this, the service cartridge, the service information on the actual machine, so you can kind of get an idea about when it was in use, what was going on, and what was the average lifespan of these machines. And in my machine's case, it was used in San Bernardino from 68 to 75, and that seems to be for a lot of the machines, because I know that there is a Type 2 machine that was lease only, that was not popular, and there was another release of the 3M Cantata. I think it's a 3M Cantata Mark II, or I'll throw a picture of it up here. But this machine was probably made at the same time that this style cartridge was made, this beige cartridge, and it matches the color scheme. So it's telling me that when that machine was released, and it's looking like 75, these cartridges were predominantly released during that time period because they match. Why would you release this, ugly ass brown cartridge that doesn't match your machine and doesn't look right? It just wouldn't make any sense. So I think that's it. I hope that answers any questions, and you can kind of see the different tape formulations on it. The early stuff uses almost off-the-shelf 3M quarter-inch tape, and it's relatively high quality. I haven't had any issues with it. And then if you go down to the 68 stuff, it's slightly different color. Something's changed with it. And then you go to the mid-70s one, it's a slightly different color. Something's changed with it, but it's still 3M tape. And then you go to the very top one, and it's weird. It's almost like cassette tape. You look at the color, it's like Type 1 cassette. And this stuff is thinner, and it just does not have the same mono fidelity as as the original one. It just doesn't sound right, and I think they knew, and I think that's why by 90, maybe even 91 for some people, the 3M Cantata was effectively dead. Nobody used it, and those that had, they're they're a little too late to the party. They need to change over to something else. But I think that's it. I hope that covers and answers some of your guys' questions on different types of tapes, and overall time frame, and what the different types of tapes are. This is I would say relatively unscripted. This is just something that I had lying around, and somebody mentioned it last week, and I wanted to make sure that their question got answered. So shoot me anything in the comments. If you got any other questions about this, I'm more than happy to answer it. Well, thanks for watching.